unless it's about the Jews. I mean, it's very subjective anyway when you get into this talk. More than 66% of hate crimes are hoaxed, and you have this perceptual bias. People think that hate is this real thing, and I think hate is a hoax. I do. But as far as free speech goes, this isn't even a free speech issue. When I say hate is a hoax, I think it's exaggerated. Like, I believe in weather, I don't believe in climate change. I think people get sick. I'm very dubious about the whole pandemic thing. I do believe that individuals hate, but as far as this quality of hate, no, you're more likely to be killed by somebody you love or somebody you know over money or greed as much as anything. I think the idea of racism is just kind of a blanket term, it's a smear, and it's practically meaningless. But what's happening to Kanye has nothing to do with free speech. His free speech has been well respected. Nobody silenced him. He said what he wanted to say. You have this freedom to say what you want. However, it doesn't grant you immunity from the consequences of what you say. And that's something he didn't think about. Oh yeah, happy birthday, Godzilla. Today is 11/3. Very significant day from a Metascript perspective. It's the birthday of Colin Kaepernick, birthday of Godzilla, and the anniversary date of the opening of the One World Trade Tower, which opened 13 years after the twins burned, the 33-year-old twins. Lots of interesting scripting around this date. In fact, the preponderance of the predictive programming pointing at Seattle getting nuked happens to point at 11/3. It really does. I mean, this is what's interesting. Just as 9/11 has been strongly associated with the burning of the Twin Towers, 11/3 has been associated with the takedown of the Space Needle. That's why I made a reference to the Tower of Babel in the video's title. And we'll get around to that, but yes, the Space Needle Seattle getting nuked is very much tied with the number 113 and the date November the 3rd. We expected this to happen in 2019. If you weren't here in 2019, we were expecting Seattle to be ground zero for some kind of cataclysmic event. And we were looking 11/3/2019. Didn't happen. And I said, well, look, much of this programming has the dates inverted, 3/11. So 3/11/2020, we marked our calendars. 3/11/2020, World War III will begin, ground zero Seattle. And what happened? Ground zero Seattle, pandemic 2020. Like, we did call this in advance. We have been using predictive programming as a way to rein in level 33 in the Godzilla versus King Kong big holiday today is significant to this Kraken narrative, which was all about the elections and released the Kraken 11/3/2020. And this reoccurring theme of the Kraken has been building up. It's been attached to Watergate, or the modern day Watergate. Liz Cheney said the dam's about to break on Donald Trump over at the 1-6 committee. Again, we're talking about this idea of this Kraken rising from below. And that's why it's significant in the Godzilla versus King Kong movie that he was at subterranean level 33. Because much of this might just be a metaphor for awakening the mob mentality, the collective psychopathy. We're talking about the 33 levels below where Godzilla is stored could easily correlate to this occult New Age concept of the Kundalini, which correlates to the 33 segments in the human spine, and it's said to, quote, rise. The fire snake, the serpent energy rises. And I think there's a correlation here between the rising of the subterranean Godzilla, the rising of the Kraken, and the rousing of Leviathan, or the mass mind. And that could be, in fact, the Kraken itself. And I've suggested this before, that the Kraken is more likely the mass psychosis on the left and the right, the extremes, going mainstream. It's more likely that than an actual massive octopus-headed creature from below the oceans popping up somewhere on the Pacific Northwest. No, I think it's about this mental shift. It also ties into Corona and the crown when you get into the whole symbolism of the rising of the fire snake Kundalini, the number 33, as it relates to the idea of the seven chakras, and the top one being the crown, the corona, which is lit at that time. And you can see in the symbolic language how all of 2020 seemed to have multiple meanings. And the idea of the corona being correlated with, of course, the sun and the rays of the sun correlating to the thorns on the crown of Christ who died at 33. This is all very much correlated. This version of the Christ and the phoenix, all connected to the reset, of course. And we'll get into all of this, but I'm just mentioning that the date 11/3, birth date of Godzilla, released the Kraken date, the date that they opened the One World Trade Tower, very significant. You could also extrapolate, look, 113, not just the date, but 113. That is very prevalent throughout all of Pixar, and it always pertains to the same theme, post-reset. Pixar has the film Wall-E, which is essentially about this. It's about the one world rising from the ashes, and that's what the Twin Towers falling represents. Burned down like a phoenix. 30 or 13 years later, they opened the One World Trade Tower, and they were originally going to call it the One World Trade Tower Phoenix. And Donald Trump was part of that plan. It was going to be called that. It would have been too obvious. But let us continue. There's just so many things about the number 113, the date, and the significance in the bigger picture. But let's go through. Spirit Jordake says Godzilla Plasma Reset. Tomonoid2 says Godzilla's radioactive home is under the sea. Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Right. Right. And again, I'm correlating Godzilla with the Kraken because specifically the birth date. Let's go through the notes that I've. There's been some new mind map developments as well. I did a mind map just showing the path from world stage to off world stage and how people arrive at the conclusions they arrive at with regards to what they believe when it comes to the televised reality. I also mapped out the character we know as Elon Musk, how he's constructed, and how this all pertains to the costume he wore on Halloween. We'll discuss that next. In fact, let's just go over that now. Because it goes back. This story of Elon Musk goes back. It goes back to who he is a composite of and who originated him. I mean, he did pretty much arrive out of the imagination of Werner von Braun. Mars, a technical tale about the Elon who colonizes Mars. But listen to this. Is Elon Musk the Antichrist Jack Parsons summoned? This has to do with that Babylon working at the very origin of NASA. But this is a symbolic breakdown of Elon Musk's world stage persona. And coincidentally, I was making a list of all the people I thought could be possibly construed as the Antichrist. Greta, Donald Trump, and I was adding Musk. And then here in Halloween, he makes the news for wearing this costume, which was described as satanic. It looks like the Red Power Ranger, just a red suit of armor, samurai style. But there's a few more things about it. And again, it's Halloween. He has a pass to wear this. And the question here is he wearing a costume? Is he engaging in cosplay as anybody, would, especially a celebrity like everybody else is? Or are they using Halloween as a cover to deliver some kind of coded message? Now, here's what I've kind of arrived at here, because the costume does happen to sync up with everything else about the world stage construct we know as Elon Musk, called abracadabras in New York. For sneak, one of a kind. Unique Iron Man-like suit of armor with a ram's head. Timestamp 1032. I know QAnon tie into that somewhere, but we're not going to get to that till later. Now, he's a composite character comprised of Werner von Braun's Elon from Mars, a Technical Tale, Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, and Willy Wonka from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Now, if you're not familiar with that one, he tried to buy part of his persona and his disposition. Of Musk as head of SpaceX is vital here. The Kabbalistic symbolism correlates Mars to the color red. Aries, which of course is the